Superfly card coming Saturday. Make sure you check it out. Before I jump to that though, let's just talk about some things that happened a couple weeks ago, week and a half ago, week and 3/4 ago. Sergey Derevyanchenko. Did anybody catch his fight against Toriano Johnson? Johnson's a pretty good fighter, and if you've heard the name before, Toriano Johnson is known for winning most of his fight against Curtis Stevens until getting stopped in the 10th and final round. He thought it was a premature stoppage. It was just what was that, I can't remember what year that was, 2012, maybe 2014. But it was that version of, let's say, Meldrick Taylor versus Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. I mean, Johnson was winning he won almost every round. And then to get into like the final minute or so and get stopped, it was heartbreaking. And I actually was at that fight. It was in Philadelphia. And I was in the hall, not thinking that he would walk by. We were just kind of behind the curtain. And I don't know what I was doing back there. I think there was some food or something. And Toriano walked past and he was upset. And if I still have, I had like a little 5-second clip of him just walking past, just mad. If I find it, it's probably on my phone. I'll just mix it in toward the end or something like that. But I felt bad. But I was kind of rooting for Stevens in that fight, so it was mixed emotions there. Well, anyway, Toriano was Gennady Golovkin's mandatory in 2016, but he had a problem with his rotator cuff, so he declined the title shot. So last Friday, or the Friday before last, he came back and he fought Derevyanchenko with the winner gaining the mandatory spot. So he was trying to regain the spot, and once again, Toriano Johnson got stopped in the final round. This time, the 12th round. Now, the difference between this fight and the one with Stevens is that Johnson didn't dominate most of the rounds in this fight. Toriano Johnson suffered through a brutal type of fight that I've seen ruin many careers. He suffered a Jeff Lacy versus Joe Calzaghe type of beating, in my opinion, and I'm not sure what he's going to have left in his next fight against better than average competition. So he might step in there and take a tune-up, and Toriano's tough, so I could see him getting by that. But the next time he actually steps up to a fight that might be even on paper, or where he's maybe like a 60-40 advantage, I'm really not sure what he's going to have left, because Derevyanchenko put it on him. I can't lie, and I just hope that Toriano I hope he's okay. And chime in below if you saw that fight. I mean, it was brutal. It was brutal. And it happened, like I said, on Friday, August 25th. That was the day before the event. And there was another huge knockout right before that fight. Same card as Immanuel Aleem got aired out by Hugo Centeno Jr. I mean, he got aired out. I'll leave a clip below. And in the clip, if you go to the 10-minute, 25-second mark, you can start there. A few seconds later, boom! So, check out the clip below, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But it was just a left hook, and he didn't see it, and but he felt it. So that's what fans, fans talk about boring fights, but if you miss cards like that, then you can't blame boxing. I mean, those two fights, my goodness. Anyway, speaking about missing fights, a card you don't want to miss is Saturday's Superfly card. Okay, that's the I was kind of motivated or inspired to play the Curtis Mayfield song, which means I won't get any points for this video, but that's okay. Superfly card, if you claim to be a boxing fan, you can't miss this card on Saturday. You get to see 5 of the best super flyweights on one card. This card has me extremely excited. On paper, it could be the best card of the year. I wish I was there because you also have Brian Viloria on the non-televised part of the card. And at one time, he was one of the top 5. And he still may argue that he is. Speaking of Brian Viloria, I'm going to leave another video below. I don't know if you have ever seen Brian Viloria's jump rope game, but man, I don't know many people who can match him. I'm going to leave a 2-minute, I think it's about a 2-minute video of him just jumping rope. Watch it all the way to the end. He's man. I tell you what, he's top 2, top 3 with the jump rope for sure. So on the Superfly card, the headliner is the rematch of possibly the best fight of 2017 between Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez versus Wisakil Wangek, aka Rasakit Sor Rungvisai. Now, it has my vote for fight of the year so far in 2017. They met in March on the undercard of the Golovkin versus Jacobs, and I thought Chocolatito won a clear decision despite the cuts and all the bloodshed that he had to endure. I had a picture of the ring canvas. The ring was covered in blood. I know Jacobs and Golovkin, if they even paid attention, probably were like, man, what just happened? But I can't find it. If I find it, I'll throw it in the video. But it just gave an idea of how brutal that fight was. Now, Chocolatito got dropped by a clash of heads and not a punch in one instance in that fight. And he was busted open by headbutts from Rungvisai at the end of the fight. His face was a mess. And Rungvisai, if I'm not mistaken, he had a point deducted because there were multiple headbutts. But Chocolatito was drenched in blood. at the end of that fight. And now the fight itself, after starting out a little shaky, I thought Gonzalez kind of took over in the middle rounds. Throughout the fight, I thought he landed the harder shots, and he should have been declared the winner, and probably should be 40. That would have been 47 or 48-0. But this is boxing, and that's all I'll say there. I've never seen Gonzalez in a bad fight, and we won't see it on Saturday night either. Win, lose, or draw. Trust me. In order to win, I think that Chocolatito needs to throw more body shots and attempt to mix in a little bit of boxing with his brawling, meaning to move while he's inside the pocket and box a little bit. Take a page out of Leo Santa Cruz's book in his rematch with Carl Frampton. While nobody thought Santa Cruz had it in him to do what he did in the rematch, we know that Chocolatito does. But something tells me he won't, as his mind is set on revenge. And I think he's going to try to knock Rungvisai out, which means boxing is going to, at points in this fight, boxing is going to be thrown out the window, and he's going to try to break Rungvisai down, which is a tough task because Rungvisai is bigger, stronger. So it's going to be interesting. In the end, while I'd rather he not brawl, I think he can still win if he fights like he did the first time. The key in this matchup is how much has Chocolatito aged. He's 30 years old, and 30 years old is old man's age for a super flyweight, especially going into his 48th fight and being in quite a few wars. If you remember, his fight before Rungvisai was on a brutal side too, when he took on Carlos Cuadras. So I thought that was a closer fight than the Rungvisai fight. I thought the Rungvisai fight was a clear victory for Roman Gonzalez. So the question is, do the back-to-back wars, along with the old age for the weight class, as well as the inhumane training that Roman Gonzalez puts his body through to make weight, do all of those things finally catch up to Chocolatito? You have to find out. You got to watch it and see. But however it plays, I'm telling you, you won't be disappointed with this fight or any of the fights on the Superfly card this Saturday, HBO. Speaking of Carlos Cuadras, he's in the co-feature. He takes on a beast, I'm telling you, in Juan Francisco Estrada. This fight is also going to be good. It could be the best fight of the night. It potentially a great fight. It kind of depends. Depends on what Cuadras shows up for this fight. At his best, Carlos Cuadras reminds me of Hector Camacho, but with more power. I mean, he's very tricky and very hard to deal with. But if anyone can deal with it, it's Estrada. Juan Francisco Estrada is a very tricky guy to fight. If Chocolatito is the best in the division, then Estrada is the most dangerous. He's that Mike McCallum guy you avad unless you have to fight him. Great fighter. I mean, he can lead, he can counterpunch. Cuadras has fast hands, good movement. It's kind of like Cuadras is Manny Pacquiao, and Estrada is like Juan Manuel Marquez, just at the lower weights. I mean, that's truly how these guys, how this fight can be looked at. Also, you got the American debut of the Monster. Naoya Inoue may wind up being the best out of all the super flyweights. Not because they're getting older and he's younger, but because the guy can flat out fight. And Inoue trains for the knockout. Trust me. He wants to make a great American debut, so if I was you, don't blink. Punches from all angles, power. I mean, he's a beast. When you look at Inoue, look at him as the Errol Spence Jr. of his class, or the Vasily Lomachenko of his class, or I don't know. I'm trying to think of another example. Like the Triple G of his weight class. I mean, a guy that nobody wants to fight unless they have to, and unless you pay them right. He's the Mike Tyson of the flyweights. I mean, so he makes his American debut, and I know he's going to try to make a big splash over here. So I'm extremely excited about this card. Please try not to miss it. Give the little guys a shot. These guys throw 70 to 120 punches per round, and they don't play any of that holding or running stuff. I mean, they fight, and they all have power, knockout type power. So I'm expecting a great card. 3 great fights. I wish they could have squeezed the Brian Viloria fight, and there's a couple others, but Superfly card, check it out. All right, another card recently announced for October 14th. It's a nice triple header. You got Erislandy Lara taking on Terrell Gausha in a WBA super welterweight or junior middleweight title fight. Lara being the champion. Gausha is undefeated, and he's got some steam behind him. He won a controversial decision over Steve Martinez a few fights ago. He has decent power, and he's going to have to stay busy if he's going to beat Erislandy Lara. If you want to see some tape, if you want to see some video on how to beat Erislandy Lara, seriously, this is no joke. Watch his 2 fights. Watch his first fight with Vanes Martirosyan. What you need to do is keep your left foot on the outside of Lara's right foot, cut him off, move him to his right, and keep that jab pumping as like a hard stick, as well as a deterrent coming in. Throw your combinations as he backs up. You can also outwork Lara and win or steal some rounds that are usually close, because Lara allows the rounds to be close. In big fights, Erislandy Lara always seems to do just enough to argue that he could have won, but not enough to clearly win. So if Gausha knows his history, he'll follow the Martirosyan blueprint. Actually, Martirosyan and Lara fought twice. They fought a second time. The first fight was a technical draw. I thought that Martirosyan won it. And so they fought again. The second fight, Lara won by unanimous decision, even though many people thought Vanes won that fight also. Watch the fights, you be the judge. They were close. So Erislandy Lara promises. He promised to put on a big show. And if you believe that, well, show you right, Erislandy. Show you right. You need to get in there and fight a name. If you get by Gachet, then it's time to step him up, baby. Next up on that same card, you have a very intriguing IBF World Super Welterweight or Junior Middleweight title matchup between Swift Jared Hurd, who's the champion, and Austin, no doubt, Trout, the challenger. Now, Jared Hurd fought Tony Harrison, and he was trailing in the fight. Definitely trailing. Big. And, you know, Jared Hurd has some flaws. It was evident in his fight with Harrison. And everyone talks about how Harrison was up big, and if he could have lasted longer, he would have won this and that, and so on and so forth. I know that because I was one of those people. But then when I watched the fight again, I realized something. For all of the flaws that Swift Jared Hurd has, nobody talked about the fundamentally sound thing that he did to win the fight. And what won him the fight is, if you go back and look at the 9th round, maybe I'll leave it, if I can remind myself to leave a copy of that too. If you skip to the 9th round, Harrison threw his patented jab as he's been doing all fight. But this time, Hurd slipped the jab and then came over the top with a big right hand to drop and eventually stop Harrison. It was a textbook dodge and shoot. So from an IQ standpoint, I see that Hurd, he tried to do it a few other times, especially in that round, but didn't land. But what that told me is that he started to see Harrison's pattern and decided, okay, I'm going to go ahead and counter over the jab and not try to counter the hook or the uppercut. So I didn't pay attention to this until I recently looked at the fight again. And so it was great execution by Hurd. And you'll see it in the 9th. He slipped the jab, boom, came over the top with the right hand. You'll see him try it from a couple of different angles before that. So it was good work. In this fight, I expect Austin Trout to fight a similar fight than Harrison did, who had success when he turned lefty. I say that because Trout is a natural lefty. He's a southpaw. So I expect Hurd to counter that by using his size and trying to just wear Austin Trout down to try to get him late if he doesn't catch him early. So at first I was leaning toward Austin Trout, but Austin is a bit like Paulie Malignaggi, in that he's kind of halfway out the door right now. He's doing more commentating on those premier boxing shows than he is fighting. So Trout last fought Jamal Charlo in May of 2016, and then prior to that he fought in September 2015. So I think Hurd is going to have to come forward in this fight. I mean, I don't think Austin has the enough pop to stop Hurd. I mean, I just don't think he can stop Swift with shots to the chin. I don't see it. I'm not sure how Hurd's body is, but my advice for Austin would be to try to find out. But I just like Hurd coming forward in this fight, using his 4.5-inch reach advantage and trying to impose his will on Austin Trout. He's going to have to eat some of Trout's shots. I think we understand that, but impose your will, use your size. For Austin, he's going to have to box extremely well and be active to beat this kid. Now, Trout has been in there with Saul Canelo Alvarez. He's been in there with Miguel Cotto. Been in there with Jamal Charlo, as I stated. And he's also fought the aforementioned Erislandy Lara. So, it's not an easy first title defense at all for Hurd. You got to like that. You got to like that from this kid. The main event will be Jermell Charlo versus the kid, Erickson Lubin, for Charlo's WBC World Super Welterweight or Junior Middleweight title. Here's what I think happens here. Whoever wins this fight, I think is going to be I think is going to hit the opponent with a counter shot that will smash their jaw. This is what I see. I don't know if it'll be Charlo. I don't know if it'll be Lubin. But I see opportunities for both guys to land counter shots to win this fight. I mean, to actually take the opponent out. Sometimes Jermell Charlo is late to get his hands totally up. I mean, they're up. But if you kind of press the action for a big follow-up shot as he's going back into the defensive mode, you can catch him. I saw this a little bit in the Hatley fight. I saw this in other fights. And you got to watch it very closely. It's surprising because what I saw a few years ago with Charlo versus Gabe Rosado was an incredible display of defense and head movement. I saw a different guy. I didn't know Charlo had this in him. I remember many were calling for Rosado to win that fight. Lubin, on the other hand, can be countered because he's wild with it sometimes. Not only wild, but wide. I mean, he leaves himself open for counters even when he's not wide with it or wild. He's just, there's a defensive flaw. So his technique needs to, maybe they worked on it. Maybe they're fine-tuning it, but sometimes these things take longer than one or sometimes even 2 training camps. Sometimes you can practice it and then you get into the heat of the moment and you kind of revert back to your bad habits. So it'll be interesting to see. I need to watch a little bit more tape on Lubin and I think 1 or 2 more on Charlo. But my mind tells me that a counter shot is going to end somebody's night before the final bell. Just got that feeling. That same night, I guess it's Premier competing against Premier, and this is done. Some companies compete against themselves to kind of see what the market yields. There was a rap music artist some years ago, Slick Rick. He used to rap against himself, like Ricky D, Slick Rick, however you want to call it. So, same night we have Leo Santa Cruz and Abner Maris in separate fights. And then if each of them win, they'll face each other in a rematch. It's a waste of time. Nobody asked for the rematch. Listen, let's start mixing Gary Russell Jr. in there. Let's mix Carl Frampton in there. Let's mix Oscar Valdez into this. Or move up a class and take on a Jason Sosa or a Miguel Burchelt or a Vasily Lomachenko or Jezreel Corrales. Come on, man. And to me, Gary Russell Jr. may be the worst out of the names I mentioned. I mean, Gary, you need to fight a name. I mean, no more Oscar Escandons. Like, let's get out here and let's fight. As you hear my grandfather clock going off in the background. It's 9 p.m. so you'll hear 9 chimes. I'm gonna keep rolling through it. Also, if you can, same night as I think it's the same night as, well, the first one is the same night as the Superfly card, but the series, if you can, one thing you want to watch is the World Boxing Super Series, the Cruiserweight Division one. They got one in the, I believe it's the Super Middleweight, but the Cruiserweight Division, I'm telling you, you are going to see some highlight reel knockouts in this tournament. These guys are all 200 pounds and they are hitting hard. And it's all the top fighters at Cruiserweight. Trust me when I tell you. I just wish they had a solid TV deal on one station. But if you can catch the World Boxing Super Series Cruiserweight Division version, watch all of those fights. Trust me. I'd be shocked if between 90 and 100% of those fights should end before the final bell. So don't miss it. Coming up next video, I'll do a Gennady Golovkin versus Saul Canelo Alvarez prediction. Catch you on the next one.